What's up? Welcome to week 3. This week we're going to finish our signature talk framework. I'm going to give you, of course, some homework and a few other things. And so I want to start with this. Make sure that you are pacing yourself. I'm quite sure that as you're looking up conferences and events, you're seeing so many things, and maybe you've been overwhelmed so far. Maybe you want to speed things up and get to the end where we're talking about money and different things, but I want to encourage you to trust the process, pace yourself. Remember that if life happens or you get overwhelmed in a moment, it's okay to take a step away and then come back. Step away and then come back. I'm honored to provide valuable information for you. This is information that's years and years and years in the making. So remember, pace yourself, enjoy the process, and when you find yourself overwhelmed, just take a moment to breathe. I was reading in a book, and I've actually seen this quote a couple of times, where the quote says, "Good is the enemy of great." One of the reasons I want to make sure that you have your niche, that you have an audience that you're specific and you want to target for the next 90 days, because we've got to be intentional. We've got to be clear. And maybe there will be some good conferences out there that you want to pursue, but I wonder, where should we put our time? How are you using your time during this process? How are you investing your time? For example, if you only have 4 hours a week to invest in Next Level, are you using it to the best of its ability? Maybe you see 12 conferences and you want to put these lists together, but maybe you said, you know what, I really want to sit in and make sure my talk is good and stellar. I want to make sure that I am scheduling to take headshots. You've got to figure out what is the greater thing that you need to do compared to good. Now, if you have a limitless amount of time, do it all, right? Do it all, but pace yourself. But be mindful that, I love the quote, "Good is the enemy of great." Okay, so focus on that. You know what? I would love to submit this proposal to share at this conference, but right now, that's going to cause me to take 2 hours away from some of these things that I know I need to do that will help me in the long, long run. Okay, so be mindful of that. Something I want you to create this list is your not to do list. Share it with me, not to do list. We all have to-do lists. We all make them. But what are those things in your life right now that you do? You do because it's a habit. You do because it's what you're supposed to do. You do because it's a family expectation. But these are things that don't really add value to your life. These are things you're not really passionate about. Now, I'm not talking about things that are necessities, such as work and working out and cooking and things like that. But are there any things that you're like, you know what? This is not really adding the amount of value to my life as I thought. I'm also not talking about pouring into friends and family. I'm also not talking about being there to support, because very often when we support someone, we're not really getting anything out of it, but everything is not about us. But look at everything that you do. What should you put on your not to do list? Is it, I need to limit my social media? I do not need to be on social media that much anymore. I do not need to engage in gossip. I do not need to be working after 11 p.m. I really don't need to be involved in this organization. I really need to stop being so hard on myself. What should go on your not to do list? I challenge you to write that list. Remember, we talked about writing things down. We're 40% more likely to get them done when we, number one, write them, when we, number two, tell somebody. And speaking of telling somebody, I want to tell you a little bit more about me. Throughout this process, you're going to learn more and more about me, learn more and more about my story. Professionally, professionally, my background is social work and mental health. I earned my bachelor's degree from TCU in business and psychology. I got my master's in social work. I got my PhD in social work with an emphasis in statistics. I've had the privilege to work for the mayor of Fort Worth. I've had the privilege to work with individuals who are considered homeless, individuals who are survivors of abuse, individuals who have been through some hard things, individuals who have been in gangs. And you notice I say individuals who, because that doesn't define who they are. It's a situation in which they were in a moment or more than a couple of moments. I currently do some behind the scenes work with some community court initiatives. Yes, I am a speaker coach. I also do public speaking across the country and other countries, and I also mentor a lot. I've been mentoring for 20 years, and I still do so. As I mentioned, I do work with, mentor, and counsel some individuals involved in that community court program in order to support them and assist them once they are out of the program and off of probation. As a speaker, there are so many experiences that I've had. Believe it or not, just 5 years ago, I was nervous about charging. Let me make sure, 6 years ago, I was nervous about charging $500 for a keynote talk. Believe it or not, when I got started in this, I had no idea you could be paid. I had no idea that there was a structure or should be a structure. I didn't do any of those things. I have struggled with fear. I have struggled with doubt. 2015 was a year of doubt. 2015 is a year that I worried about what I thought other people were thinking. Not what they were actually saying, but worried about what I thought they might say or they might think. I've allowed fear to get in the way of me pursuing some amazing opportunities. And I will tell you, fear might try to come in, but I have to push it out of the way because there's work I have to do. Because I have a gift. And this gift is not for me to keep. This gift is for me to offer other people. And so I am walking so much in confidence in doing what I do. But it doesn't go without having moments of being, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Or, oh my gosh, I'm a little nervous. And by the way, I do still get nervous. I do still get nervous before every engagement. And for me, being nervous is a good thing. Being nervous is an indication that what I'm doing is important to me. Because if I'm not nervous, that means I'm walking in a little too cocky. So that's just a little bit about me in terms of speaking now and just my life. I think you know this. I love my nephews. I'm always visiting my nephews as often as I can. They give me life. I love dancing, salsa, merengue, reggaeton, and I try to incorporate all of that into things I do. So let's get to your speaker framework. Framework. Let's get to it. So your framework. Remember, let's recap the pieces. Your powerful opening, your brief introduction into who you are, the how, your story, the steps, the small little kind of closing introduction, and then your powerful closing along with interactive components. So during week 2, you were supposed to put together your story, your story, and then the couple of tips. So if you have a passion to support men recognize that they are powerful right now, what's the story? When I was 10 years old, I remember seeing my father do this, and that's the first time I saw a man be powerful. And powerful, in my opinion, is not strength, physical strength, but he was emotional, and he cried, and he asked for help, and then he kept going. Gentlemen, you are powerful today, and here are 4 things to help you remember that you are. The first thing is that you just need to look in the mirror and say, I am. So those are the things, like, again, how do we get to your what? If my what is I want men to know that they're powerful, how do we get to that? Now, our powerful opening. As you're thinking about this, I want you to write different ideas for you, and you can open in different ways. It could be multiple times. You're going to do your talks many times, and you're going to have multiple openings. So in the powerful opening, so generally how people start talks is good morning or good afternoon or good evening. Thank you so much for having me. That's powerful. You can do that. But an even more powerful way to open is if you started with a brief story, with a quote, with a statistic, with something, with a question. Okay. So let's say I'm giving a talk on self-care. Good morning. I'm so grateful to be here. Today we're going to talk about self-care, right? How many of you believe you get enough rest? How many of you do not get enough rest? I am with you. And hopefully today we're going to discuss opportunities for you to rest even more and have intentional rest. My name is Dr. Kristen Guillory. So you can start with a question. And anytime you ask a question and you can apply to it, hopefully every question you ask you can apply to, you raise your hand with them. Okay? And here's the key with asking people. Anytime you ask someone to incorporate movement, you say the phrase, if you are able. If you are able, please raise your hand. If you are able. Okay? So that's a question. Another is, good is the enemy of great. How many of you pursue good opportunities and you overlook the great ones? Today we're going to talk about purpose. My name is. So you can start with a quote, right? Start with a quote. Did you know that 60% of U.S. households have less than $1,000 in their savings? Less than $1,000 in their savings. Building wealth, financial management are so important. So again, you can open it up with the good morning, which is just fine, but to make it greater with a question, with a quote, with a stat. I remember walking on a college campus and a student approaches me and says, Dr. Guillory, are you single? And I said, yes. And the student said, oh my gosh, okay, good. And I said, why? Okay, good. Because you're happy and you wear heels. And I was like, what? And the student walked off. Later on, I recognized what that student was saying is, I'm not supposed to be happy and single, and I am only supposed to wear heels if I want to attract men. What she didn't know was that she's complete now. That being single is valuable now. So that's a way to start it with a story. So our 4 ways to start is with a story, with a quote, with a question, or with a statistic. You put these options in your category, write them down. I could start like this, feel it out, play with it a little bit, okay? That second sliver is a brief introduction to who you are. So then you start with the story, stat, quote, question, and then my name is, I'm so grateful to be here. You can actually say your I recognize statement right there. You give your story, stat, question, okay, quote. My name is Dr. Kristen Guillory. I'm so honored to be here, and I recognize today that women are overwhelmed, and I'm passionate about providing support in those areas. And then you could keep going by saying, but rest was always not important for me. And then you get into your story. What? It's about to connect. You get into your story. I remember being 21 years old. I remember 10 years ago going through a divorce. And that's the first time I felt alone and I was broken and I did not know what to do and I needed help. See how that flows? Your powerful opening, the question, quote, stat, story, to this is who I am, to your I recognize statement, and it flows straight to your story. Straight to your story. After you give your story, and with that, I want to offer you 5 steps to take as you're pursuing a life of self-care or as you're walking in your confidence. And you present them and you can incorporate your story back into that. So you could say the first one is to look in the mirror every day and say, I am beautiful. I remember there was a time I didn't do that. I didn't believe it, but I had to say it over and over. Okay, so there's your how. After you give your 5 steps, here's a tip on when you give your steps. This is part of the art of speaking that we're going to get into during week 4, but I want to touch on it here. When you give steps, make sure to repeat the previous one. So if I'm giving steps and saying the first step to rocking your confidence is compliment someone every day. The second step is to compliment yourself. The first step is compliment others every day. The second step is to compliment yourself. The third step is to ask questions. What was that first step again? Compliment someone else. Second step, to compliment yourself. Third is to ask questions. Fourth is to celebrate victories. Remind me of that first step. First step is to compliment others. Second step is to compliment yourself. Third step is to ask questions. And the fourth is to celebrate victories. What it does is when you repeat, people are able to retain it a little bit more. And the person who was just kind of listening to you, now they're engaged when you repeat them. Okay. After you give those tips, now it's, I've been so honored to be here. I would love to chat with you afterwards if you would like, right? Now your powerful closing. That little brief thing like, hey, I'm going to hang out if you want to chat. Now the powerful closing. How do you close? There are so many options to do so. One way is to remind them of the tips and say, I challenge you to do this, right? Another way is is interaction, and you have them stand up and repeat after you, or turn to your neighbor, or I want you to stand and say, I will. Another closing is you finish your story. Maybe there's a part of your story that you finish at the end. And remember that 10-year-old boy that I told you about? I don't think he ever knew that that 10-year-old boy would grow up to be an astonishing man. Gentlemen, you are astonishing right now. Okay? Another way to close it is by I agree, or I challenge, or just a thank you for being here. So those are different ways you can have a powerful closing. And I want you to be creative. I want you to think about it. I want you to reference talks that you've seen. And as you start seeing people talk, I want you to pay attention to how they close. And if you see things that stand out, write it out. Now, the interactive component. I believe in interaction. I believe every talk should have an interactive component. Now, I don't mean that you go and do all the interaction that you see someone else do, or that maybe that you see me do, but there needs to be some type of interactive component. What I mean by that is there needs to be something where they're raising their hand with you, or where you have encouraged them to look at the person next to you and say, I'm so glad you're here. Or give them 10 seconds and say, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to meet the person next to you. Or in your talk, you'll say, I'm now going to give you 40 seconds to chat with the person next to you about things that have prevented you from moving forward. But anytime you do that, make sure everything is intentional. So if you ask a question like that, you're going to want to bring them back and say something like, how many of you could relate to your new friend? How many of you said things such as the fear was you getting in your own way? Or fear such as what you think other people would think. Again, make sure every part of your talk is intentional. Everything. If you play music, don't just walk into the song, move a little bit to the song. Move a little bit to the song. And then when they stop playing the song, kind of say some words to it. Make sure everything is intentional. I was having a conversation actually with my speaker coach who said, tell me about your talk. Or not speaker coach, kind of coaching coach and speaker coach all together. And I gave him the pieces. He said, no, let's not talk about the icebreakers. I said, no, these aren't icebreakers. These are intentional. For example, a lot of my talks, a lot of them, we start with doing some merengue. And we dance, and I'll ask questions like, I'll say things such as, I wonder, everybody say, I wonder. I wonder how you felt when you discovered you were going to dance. So what did we think? How did you feel? Be honest. And I'll hear things like, I'm excited. Oh no, I can't dance. So I wonder, everybody say, I wonder. I wonder how many of you in your professional and personal lives have felt, oh no, I can't do this. You felt, I don't know how to do this. Or you have felt, I'm excited. And yet, what did I see everybody in this room do? Everybody moved. So despite the hard things that you face, despite those moments where you're not sure what you can do, and if you know what to do, you have still moved. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my encouragement to you today is to be. For the next hour, I'm going to ask that you're just still. Right? Or I'll use it in different ways. So you work through that discomfort, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about some uncomfortable topics. And the same way you move through dancing and you've moved through life, I ask you to still move through the discomfort. Everything I do is intentional. I'll have people say, I'm going to give you 7 seconds to compliment the person next to you, because here's a tip. Here's a tip. I do these things to activate certain parts in the brain. I do those things to activate certain parts in the brain, because I know when you move and I have you, you're paying attention a little bit more. You're paying attention a little bit more. I have spoken at events where the audience is talking while other speakers are talking, and they have not stopped talking. I get on stage, and because of certain techniques I add, and because of what I am able to do, the talking stops. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next couple of weeks. Okay? So whatever your interactive component is, you only need one. For your first couple of talks, I just want one. Less is more. Remember, less is absolutely more. Remember that the purpose of your talks is to connect at a heart level. When you give them some of you through your story, when they can tell it you're fully present in the talk, you're giving them some of you. So, We're finishing the framework this week. And your second homework, the first homework is make that not to-do list. The second homework is I want you to record yourself this week. Throughout the Next Level process, you are going to be encouraged to record a minimum of 3 videos and post them in the group for feedback. So week 3 is the first time. I want you to record yourself. Now, I'm not worried about the art of speaking piece. I'm not necessarily worried about your body language or your tone this week. I want to hear your content. I want to hear your content. So when you record, you can record seated, but it's actually better when you record standing. Okay? So your challenge this week is I want you to record your talk, no more than 10 minutes. Record your talk. Record your talk. Powerful opening, brief intro tied in with your I recognize statement, your how, your story, and your tips, along with another kind of closing small statement and your powerful closing with some interactive components there. Post it this week. This week. Do not record it more than a couple of times. Remember, it will never be perfect. Do it. Do it. Do it. Post it. Post it. Post it. So that's your second homework. Here is something that I want us to continue working on. We're building lists, right? We're building lists of support systems. We're building lists of potential speaking engagements and clients and all of that stuff. Here's a list that I want you to build. Keep adding to the social support list. People who are in your support system, keep adding to that list. If you have maybe 10 to 20 conferences in your potential client list, if you have, along with that, it doesn't just have to be conferences. It could be names of schools, universities, corporations, whatever it is, add it to your list. Now, here's a third list. I bet over the years, over the last year, you've heard somebody say, oh my gosh, we really need you to come in and speak. Oh my gosh, we would love to have you at our event or at our school. Sit down and think about that. Think about the people who have said that, write them down. That's a separate list. The people who have said, you know what, we really could use you, write that down. We're doing all these lists because in a couple of weeks, we're going to be using and working these lists. And I would rather you have the list ready to go because we're going to have some work to do that week. So write the name, write the email address. And if you can remember where you were when they said it. You've had it happen. Maybe you've had a speaking engagement and someone has approached you and said, oh my gosh, we'd love to have you at our center. Maybe you were leading a small group or Bible study and your small group members said, oh my gosh, you would be really great speaking at this event. Write them down. Write them down. Write them down. A secret of mine is I believe in reaching out, or I believe in the cold call emails that we will do. But one thing that we often don't do or don't even consider is cultivating the current relationships, cultivating the people who have already said that they're interested. 85% of my engagements have all been referrals or word of mouth. 15% have been either me emailing out or submitting proposals, but literally 85% have been referrals or me following up with someone who had me speak last year. So your third list is anyone who has ever said we could use you. Write them down. Get that list together. Get that list together. And your final homework. So first homework is your not to do list. Second homework is record that video. Hey. Third homework is create the list of people who have said something along the lines of, we would love to hear you. We'd love to come in. Fourth homework is we're going to create your email form. Okay. It's real quick. You created your speaker request form last week. We're going to create your email form. My $100,000 mistake, almost like $500,000 mistake, was not capturing emails. Not capturing emails. How do you do that? You send around a sign-in sheet or you have a form for people to create, right? It's going to be up to you. You can just create a Word document or you can do a Google form. And I'll tell you how to use a Google form with a QR code in another week. I just want us to create. Again, we're building. Homework 1, not to-do list. Homework 2, your video. Homework 3, just write down names and email addresses of people who've said we could use you. Homework 4, your email list. You've got to capture email addresses after your engagements. You've got to. Now, if it's a keynote talk, that's a little harder. But you still could if you have a table. Again, we'll talk about all of that. In your final homework this week, I need you to tell 5 to 10 people in your lives that you are, how did I write this down? Tell 5 to 10 people in your life that you are launching your speaking career, or for those of you who have been speaking, that you're taking your speaking career to the next level. Tell them your I recognize statement. Let them know you are in a speaker coaching program and just tell them, hey, I need to tell you something. I am taking my speaking to the next level. I recognize this and I'm passionate about this. I'm currently in a coaching program and I would love your support. Just tell them. I don't want you to do anything else. Just tell them. So homework is not to-do list. Video. List of people who've said we could use you. And if they haven't, that's okay. But then you'll know that if somebody says it, you can add them to the list. Fourth thing is your email form, real short and sweet. And fifth thing, tell 5 to 10 people that you are taking your speaking to the next level. You're launching your speaking career. I'm so proud of you. Let's keep working. You're amazing. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.